it was just kind of like, well, it's official. We're not going to get this enzyme. And, like,
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Saints Unscripted podcast. We were talking before, these are always the hardest things to do, is do the intro or whatever. But today we have Mechelle Wingle here. Thank you for coming on, Mechelle.
I'm so excited. I'm like a total groupie. I told you. I love your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That makes me feel really good. Thank you. So yeah, Mechelle is here. She made the trip down here, which I'm so grateful for. And we talked before filming, which part of me wishes we just had a camera rolling and released that as the episode. And it was an awesome conversation. And we have a cool topic, a really interesting topic to talk about today. And it's about a 10-year and going and a 10-year faith crisis that Mechelle has been involved in, maybe involuntarily.
Right. Dragged along.
Yes. And I know one side of it, but I don't really know your side of it super well. But maybe you can maybe we can start with that if you'd be willing to share a little bit about that, or not a little bit. Please share as much as you want.
Share a lot. So we were living we had just built a big, nice home in a nice custom home neighborhood. And we had all our 4 children, and life was going to be great. And my husband was called as the eldest quorum president, and I was called in the Relief Society presidency, and a brand new ward that was just created. And I remember driving along the road and thinking, oh, wow, we've kind of just made it, like feeling all good about things. And that's when things started to just kind of crumble. For whatever reason, our bishop just kind of struggled with my husband as the eldest quorum president and wanted him to do things, like not bad things, but like we were a new ward and they had these, my husband just kind of wanted to get to know the elders, he has this really tender heart and knew that, hey, if people aren't doing everything perfectly, then there's something going on there. And so let's show love to these people. Like, he had this gift I remember watching him as the eldest quorum president go and visit this family, and the dad's just smoking away, and he just could stand there, didn't blink an eye. He's just that genuine type of person. He didn't have any discomfort. He was just happy to be there and loving on this guy, and I knew that about him. I was so proud of him because that was the truth of him. He doesn't play the games and those kind of things, but him and the bishop kind of I think the bishop was just more of a achiever and a numbers guy, and you've got my husband who's not a numbers guy, right? Like doesn't know numbers, and he didn't go on a mission. And so he didn't have that background of numbers, of this is the formula for how to get people to come and to do these things. My husband was more just like, nice to everybody, maybe even to a fault, I would say. And in that struggle of trying to figure that out, trying to figure out how he can be obedient to this bishop, it was difficult to, just always wanting that, to be enough what he was doing and just never getting it from this bishop. And so one time we went to the temple actually, and he went up to the veil, and the temple worker started to speak things he had never heard before. So came home and started to kind of look those things up, and then realize, back then, 10 years ago, we were talking about this. There was no gospel topics of difficult things, none. And so the only place that when you put that into Google, all you're going to get is like really difficult things. There was no, even I don't know when Rough Stone Rolling was made, but that was like controversial book, and that's like sold at Deseret Book, it's not that bad, but it was like, people would feel very uncomfortable reading that book back then. This was nothing. This was the beginnings of what the word faith crisis hadn't even been invented at this point, right? This was at the beginning. So when he Googled those words, you start to learn things like, oh, first of all, that the temple ceremony had changed, and so it just kind of started to really worry him about some things. And that kind of stemmed from, the fact of Joseph Smith in the Carthage had a gun, like he had a gun. And so I don't know if Hiram did, but it was like, I never heard that before, and it's just that feeling of, I think it just is this jolt. And we've talked about too, people that when you have these faith crises, it's not like this sequential thought process of, oh, well, this and this and this. It just tumbles. And we talked about that, like that moment that that people would say their shelf breaks is this like really painful, really traumatic, like just, it's not a thought process of anything. It's like just a physical pain. There's like a physical pain to it. There's emotional pain. There's confusion. There's anger. It's a whole experience that you can't describe. I don't think everybody's been able to describe their experience. That real pain and all of those things. But when we go to describe it, we can say it in certain words. We can say it in certain vocabulary words, but it's never enough. It's never enough.
I think we had talked before. I was like, well, we've made 30 or more episodes. Yeah. And who knows, maybe you're catching us at our 100th episode. Right. And I still haven't even.
Yeah, you can't scratch the surface.
The surface.
Right.
How many hours of podcast is that?
Right.
Sorry if we've wasted your time if you've gotten to this point.
Right. There's no definition that does justice to what that experience is like. And at the time, and he's going through this and he is not a sharer, let's say, I'm thinking this is something we've had to learn in marriage that counseling is I think out loud, right? I'm like, in order for me to process, I'm like talking it out. He was not brought up that way. You didn't talk unless you had got it all figured out, and so he would come to me with these little things. I'm thinking he's thinking out loud. No, he has had a whole process, right? So he's declaring, and I'm thinking he's thinking out loud. So I'm not giving him the response that he is looking for because I'm like thinking we're having this discussion and he's coming to me with this. This is what's going on. This is what's happened, not what's happening, right? So you go through like these stages, like, there was this first couple of years that it was just a little hard. And then our bishop was made our stake president. That just kind of was just heart-wrenching for him because what it felt like to him was God chose his way and not my way. That's how it felt. Like I say, it's not a thought process. You can't put any you don't make a case for it, but it feels that way.
Oh, yeah, we had to talk about that a lot too before.
Right.
Thought process, it's more visceral.
Yes, like it's all-encompassing, experiential.
Hard to describe.
Right.
I think actually, real quick, I'm sorry for taking this, but
yeah.
So someone a few episodes ago had asked me, so what was that like when you first plunged in? I was like, oh, it felt like I was in a plane.
Yeah.
And one of the turbines was blown up and we just started plummeting to the earth.
Yeah.
But that was after some thought. But when he asked me, no, how'd you feel though?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. It just felt like a huge deep pit. Like it was, and when you say physical, that has a lot of like, oh wow, yeah, that was my experience. Wow. Okay. So anyway, sorry. I thought I might comment on that.
I think it's important because I think we get I think it would be better if we could figure that out because you have people that haven't gone through it and they want to know it in a process form or in a logical linear form of this transition or like, over the years, because 10 years is a long time, it's like, well, what was your big issue? What's your big issue? And then as soon as you give that big issue, most of the time people will say, oh, well, and they tell their story of how they just don't worry about that. Or I just, I have heard that a million times.
I just don't worry about that.
Yeah, I just don't worry about
Stop
that.
thinking about it so
Right.
much.
I just figure that and you're just left there with this big gulp. Like, I'm glad you can just let it go. I would give anything to let it go. Right? I would give anything to let it go. And it took me a long time to recognize that was my husband's experience. I still came in wanting to fix things. And so I get on the research and I'm this, this mom from Utah, and I'm like, well, look, there's this and this and this. Cause I learned you don't go to like the apologetic sites because that just irritates the site, so that was a whole learning process. So I would get on like, my favorite places to go to were like colleges and universities because they'd have these research papers. You get pieces of it, so I could put together this narrative of like, here's why here's the explanation for horses. Here's the explanation for, barley, I could, here's the explanation. Well, did you know that there's this and how could he have done that? Like this was a whole thing that I could create a narrative for, but it wasn't anything that made him say, that just melted away and I'm done, because that's not what goes on. That's not what's happening. It's not this like a court case where you're just coming up with this solution. And as soon as that solution's presented itself, all those emotions melt away and you walk away a happy person. It's not. But it took a long time for me to accept that, right? It took a long time for me to accept it. So about 2015, so we're about 5 years in and back and forth between, making, like we would go to church and be a part of it. And there was this moment, I think everybody has this moment where you kind of bear a new testimony. And
okay. What does that mean for you?
Well, he was kind of like, maybe I don't know about this, but maybe I can figure it out, or it's almost like a coming out, like this, like I'm struggling with these things. And the people that know the stories, the people that know the difficult questions, like they know, but the rest of everybody else is just like, I don't even know what he's talking about. Right. But it's like you put this little toe into this is experiencing in my life. And again, we talked about before, this is way before gospel topics. There was nothing, the church had nothing but rough stone rolling was really the only thing that acknowledged anything. And that didn't get into any of the like Book of Mormon issues, people that had struggles with different historical or DNA in the Book of Mormon, that wasn't ever addressed. Or blacks in the priesthood or the Book of Abraham and these kind of things. I mean, I was getting on and learning Egyptian hieroglyphics. And you know what was funny? Like awesome. There were some things was like, wow, he got pretty close here. Like, I mean, if I'm just looking at the things and I'm like, he got some pretty close here. And then there was, but I couldn't sit there and just read it like it was normal. Like, so every time for me would go into this place, I would move into this direction and be like, oh, here we go. But it was never 100%. So I always just found myself back in the middle. and just kind of for me, just like, well, I'm there, both of these extremes they have their issues, which was hard for me because I don't think I would have thought of myself as not an extreme person, but everybody I think we think that's where you're supposed to strive to, is be this stalwart, perfect member of the church. Right. And so I don't think I was, but I think I thought that was the goal. And so all of a sudden for me, this started changing. Like, actually over there, people that think they're over there, they're not very kind people, or they have some things that I'm not really okay with. And then these people over here, like sometimes they say really mean things, but they're in pain. And when I'm in pain, I'm not that great at speaking well either, so I felt like so in between. And it was a hard place. The spouse gets, I guess, I don't know if I would say I was lucky, but I didn't ever, I didn't double down like I think maybe that I would guess myself doing. I would surprised at myself that I really, like I say, it went through phases, but you get to that point where you're on your knees and you say, Father, I let it, whatever you're going to make me do. And you allow that to exist. And I even remember having, like one of my little dream visions. And I was asked I was told to sit and try and think about, Christ or Heavenly Father. This time it was Christ giving me a gift to just allow myself to visualize what that would be like with my eyes closed, like a meditation. And as I was sitting there, I all of a sudden I felt like a little fir tree. And that's the word that came to my mind, was the fir tree. And what that was I felt so prickly, like just like I felt so alone. And I felt just this warm embrace and this love, like love on me, like loving those prickly parts of me as much as I could. And it was such a very real experience to me. And when I was done, I looked up in the Bible that the fir tree has certain symbolism to it and all this stuff. And so it was a very powerful moment for me. But what's interesting, and I have several of those moments, I have several of those experiences where my intention was I wanted to go to Father and Mother Heaven, and I wanted them to take away what was happening. And in the end, it was more like I just was held. I was just held. And nothing was different, but I just was able to move on or exist, and exist. And in some days that helps you, and some days that fixes things, and then other days it does not. So it's a roller coaster ride of emotions. Well, 2015 comes, and I mean, like I remember the tension was so high, because what we know now is some things, and everybody's situation is so different. But for my husband, there were some emotional things that we're now working through that make sense for some things. Some self acceptance that needed to happen. Some things he wasn't taught as far as being enough. None of us, I don't think, get that enough of that. But to him, it was a really important part of his story. And it's really easy to have, religion's really easy, because if I check all these boxes, then I'm enough. And so you have to move into this place where those boxes have to go away, and I have to be enough regardless, and that's really a scary place to be. So in 2015, my mom passed away, and that was kind of a moment for me where I had to figure some things out for myself, and just kind of like, it was just kind of like, well, it's official. We're not going to get this enzyme. Like, it's official. Like, this is not just, and I love people, but that was another thing too. If I was ever vulnerable, it was like, but don't you think this is going to be so great? Because then one day, or what's the possibility? And it just became it feels like that it doesn't matter, or that I should be happy about it. Everything, like none of this mattered. Aren't you just grateful?
I hate that. I hate, or you're in the refiner's fire. The Lord is working with you.
Right.
And while that may sound true or be logical, makes sense according to the beliefs that we have.
It's not, it doesn't help.
It doesn't help.
It's not helpful.
No.
Because it feels very much like that feeling you're having, don't have that anymore. or just stop. And again, like we said before, I would like, that's the thing that I need to understand. I would like people to understand a little bit is that this is not like, if I just did this, then this would happen. You do that. Like you try everything. I feel like I was like at a slot machine, you're like, keep going, like one more time. Come on. This is going to be the big win. Come on. This is it. Okay. If I pray, there was a time where I put his name on the temple it was for a whole year. It was on the rules of the temple. I would call different temples around the world. Like, it wasn't ever because I wanted his salvation to be secure. That was a gift for me. I never worried about that. That was never a concern for me. What I really wanted is my own pain to go away. And I wanted to have everything just fold back up into its neat little bowl. And we sit there on the bench on Sundays and we look and fit in with everybody else. That's what I really wanted. And even right now, it's like right there. Like if somebody offered it to me, it would be really hard to deny it. You're like, okay, because it's tender, it's like just to be different is hard. It's hard. For me, I was the youngest of 7. I always wanted to be like my big brothers and sisters. I didn't want to be the different one. I was doing my little elementary things. They're off dating. Like that's a big part of my core wound is wanting to fit in. So getting to the point where I could allow myself to realize this is going to be, this is going to be different. Life is going to be different was a big deal. Like that was a big deal. Or to start to say, okay, I surrender. What can I do now? Like, what can I do now? And it never was about making it okay. Because like I say, I'm honest with you. It's right there. Like, take it away. I don't know.
Yo, I'm there too.
Yeah. Like, just make it go away. But now I've had this idea, but without this, we talked about this before. I know I had some armor on. And having this experience helped me take off some of my armor and be open and be vulnerable. And it was painful. It still is so painful, so painful. But I've also been able to be with people. Like, I can be here in your presence and be with you on a level that I would have never been able to handle before. Not because of you, but because of my own insecurities within myself, my own discomfort, because it was foreign to me. So now living in 10 years of being in an unforeign land, now being with people that are unlike me doesn't scare me. Doesn't send me in anxious inside my body. That's the thing I had to learn was these were my feelings and my emotions, my discomfort. And we kind of don't pay attention to our feelings or like sensations in our body. We just like, that's uncomfortable, shut it down and change the subject. But they're here to tell us something. But they're here to tell us something about ourselves more than about the other person now. And a lot of times I think maybe that discomfort is, I am uncomfortable in this person's presence. Is that something I want to cultivate and grow? Or do I want to shift that and convert it to something else? And I love the word convert because a lot of times that gets, if you're converted to the gospel, then you are like, we kind of say it as if you're committed, but converted is changed, and change is difficult. Change is hard, and that's another like kind of dream I had. It was Christmas time and I was just really pondering the story of the 3 wise men. And I just had this beautiful vision of these wise men bringing the gift. And I thought to myself, that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing a gift of all my ordinances, all of my, whether that's taking the sacrament or whether that's going through the temple, anything that I am doing, all of my obedience, even like that word has to go in quotes because we get really, but anything that I am willingly putting there as my package to present as my gift to the Lord with This is my offering. That was the word that came to me. It's not about better than or right or else, like, but what will you do? I got crazy with that. Like, people are so nervous about everything's got to happen in a certain way. But if once I could switch it to my offering, this is my offering. And when my offering looks like this little package that I present, and someone else's might look different, but I don't look at theirs and be like, no, I shouldn't. But it became very symbolic of my offering, and what is my offering, and that's what I present. And when I get done, everything that not even just my ordinances and those kind of things, but every time I've been kind to someone, every time I've done anything that added and built up the kingdom is my offering. And the bigger trick is to allow my offering to be enough. Like, as soon as I compare it, then we get into trouble. But I am the one that says it's enough. I'm the only one that can allow it to be enough, because nobody can convince, it's always like, no, like, oh yeah, you get a compliment and you've always got to make it go away somehow, make it less than. But I don't know if that's the better way. It's not the best way. The best way is when I present it full on, proud of my offering, not in comparison to anyone else's, but only within myself and what I can bring to the table.
Yeah, when you say offering, I loved what you said, and then really I was going to respond differently, but right at the end of what you're saying, I thought of something else where I remember, and you kind of talked about this when you were praying, and either not feeling an answer or not feeling like things are getting taken from you, or not feeling saved, or
right.
not feeling helped.
Yes.
And you just felt that embrace.
Yeah.
And I remember instances where, and I've had problems praying.
Mm-hmm.
I find it so hard to pray sometimes, and I feel, and so maybe I can go back to, when this kind of started, and I heard messages of, well, are you reading the scriptures? Are you reading them every day? Are you pondering them? Are you praying every day? Are you praying it twice a day? Whatever. Are you going to the church? Are you going to church every Sunday? And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe I've not done those as perfectly as I should have. Oh, that must be the reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I tried, okay, I'm going to try and read the scriptures. You try to read the scriptures more, or try to read the scriptures harder.
Yep.
And then I tried to pray, which if we're talking about, a year ago is when things started to get serious, right? When I started to call Mayday on the plane going down and praying, and I was like, I feel no connection, and I feel like I'm praying and no one is listening. I am not, it's either me doing something wrong, or, and then, I can drop into all of those reasons why, oh, well, God doesn't love me anymore. God this, God that, because Jake is this way. I've separated. Anyway, and I just could not feel, anything. And I having this hard time connecting, and in turn, I really had a hard time going to church.
Yeah.
And I just could not go to church. I just could not see myself going. And it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel authentic. Not that it wasn't right or whatever, because now I don't want to sound like I'm like,
I hear
sometimes it's not okay to, it's not right to go to church, so don't go to church. I'm not saying that at all, but it didn't feel like that for me. And part of me is thinking, well, I guess I still could leave, right? I could stay. And this whole journey has been like, I have to choose one of those two. I have to leave, or I have to stay and make things right somehow. Yeah. And I was like, oh, those are the only two options I have, which luckily I've had incredible people along this journey. Was like, well, what if you choose neither of those? and I remember you saying a little earlier in the podcast where you just felt like you kept getting thrown back into the middle.
Yeah.
Or like, I need to go somewhere. And it's like, nope, back into the middle,
Yes.
back into pain, back into uncertainty. Nope,
Yes.
Mechelle, you are not going to figure it out.
Right.
By year 5, we're at year 10. And maybe I can get some of your thoughts there.
Yeah.
Is your husband left
Mm-hmm.
the church.
He removed his name in 2016.
So completely done.
Mm-hmm.
And you did not.
I did not.
And, eventually, and maybe we'll talk about later in the story what happens, but maybe, do you mind talking a little bit about that? Like, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, why did
what
you
were
stay?
You thinking?
Why didn't you head out? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
because there's, as I'm going along, is like, I'm starting to find more of a difference between religion and spirituality. I don't know if that has any connection with
the best word. Yeah.
I just, what are your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
So when he removed his name, like the shame, like that was really hard for me. Like I didn't want to, tell anybody. I didn't want to go anywhere or do anything because it was just all encompassing. Because it was just, there's a lot of stuff that goes there. There's your temple marriage is closed. Like that like severs that, right? And I don't know how I even survived that, but I will tell you one piece of it. So we're talking, my son left on his mission, that was a big deal. That's a big deal to get a son on a mission. And all of a sudden now my family, I've been raising these kids all this time. And all of a sudden now my mothering felt like, wow, wait, things are never going to be the same again. So I'm having this whole experience there. My mom passed away. I had a child who we discovered had some sexual abuse that had happened. And then my dad was deciding to get remarried just months after my mom passed away. And in fact, this new wife had never been sealed. So they were going to go get sealed and I was going to have, so that came into play. And then my other son was having severe anxiety and depression. And then my husband removed his name. So we're talking in a 6-month period of time, all of that happened. And so I'm at this bottom. I mean, you don't get much more bottom than just like, it just felt like punch down at the very bottom. And at that point, I didn't care where I was going to get help. I needed help. I didn't care where it came from. So that's the first time I went and had a session with Robin. I went and had a session with her. And it was just kind of like one of those, like, this had been just showing up a little bit and I didn't know exactly what it was, but it was like, I just need to feel better. I don't care if I have to sign, like my soul away. This is more than I can handle. But in that moment, in that session, when I looked back at, and now I've gotten trained in all of this, so I do this for other people, but I didn't know it at the time. But, you go through and you have these core experiences that have affected you in your adulthood. You've had these core pieces of yourself you've kind of lost mostly in childhood. So here I come thinking, my big problem is my husband leaving the church. And when he got on the table and I had this issue, I was feeling something from my childhood. So that was interesting to me. That was the first going, hey, I showed up here with these insecurities and feelings because of blah, 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 50 million things along the way. Someone else came here, let's say, like, because I had a neighbor or whatever, and if her husband, they had never gotten married in the temple, and she was just like, it's fine. She didn't ever have that experience. So I started to realize that my experience is my experience, not just the way that it is for everybody. For me, I kind of thought, and I felt like nobody would trade me places. I felt like the scariest person in the world. Nobody would want to be where I'm at. Oh, like I could go, like I felt like anybody would say, yeah, I'd go through anything but what she went through. And that was really lonely because I'm like, yeah, and I don't feel any different than you people, and I have to still go through this. So that was really powerful for me to understand that coming to this a lot of my own discomfort was my own discomfort. Because whenever I went and connected to heaven, I was okay. They were okay. I didn't get an anxious feeling from them. I never got this like, but now you're not sealed anymore. What are you going to, I didn't have that. And if somebody wants to tell me I should have felt that way, I can let them have that. But I did not have that experience. In fact, I want to circle back to even what you said a little bit, because this is so important, is like, let's say that, you saved all your money and you want to go on you saved all your money to go on a trip to Hawaii. Like you've saved all your money and you went to Hawaii. Who doesn't love Hawaii, right? But you go to Hawaii and for whatever reason, there's a trauma. You have a trauma there. So you feel hurt, pain, fear galore, the world ending. And then you come home and then everybody's like, let's go to Hawaii. And for you, you're like, I can't go to, terror comes over your body when you think about Hawaii, right? Like that's the experience when people say, just go to church or just read your scriptures or just do those things. It's not like you're saying, no, it's you now have this pain attached to it or this hurt attached to it that tells your body, it tells you, stay away, like pain, anguish. And so it's like, just, it's not that you're thinking, oh, the scriptures are bad because of this and this and this. It's just you're having this reaction to the scriptures because of this pain that has happened. And so, and that's why those answers like, well, just read your scriptures more, or just pray more, or just go to the temple more and all that stuff. We really need to find another avenue for that kind of language, because that's answering the wrong question. We're not asking, it's not like this. I don't understand this. We're not asking, I don't understand this, but yet we're feeding people information as if that's what the question is. But what the question, it's not even a question. It's a full on experience of pain, anguish, fear, dread, worry, not enough, too much. What's wrong with me? Why won't this happen for me? Why does everybody else have this experience and I don't? Like, I know people have had that experience. I know people have felt pieces of that. You can't get through junior high without feeling some of that, right? Go back to your junior high days. You can't just say, you don't just sit there and say, yeah, but something's going on. And I am, I can just, yeah, that's not true. And you just, those feelings just melt away and you move on. You have to work through them. And that's what these people, when people have faith crises, this is what's happening, is it is this full on emotion moving at 100 speed that you've never felt before, just crazy. So that's really important, because as a spouse, I think I have a unique way of being able to see that perspective, because it wasn't in me, but I could observe it. And I was there trying to hand him the answers. I was trying to give him the logic to make it all go away. And that didn't help. And we're doing a little better when it's like, just love him. That's a little better. But even then, understand that they would trade it too. That's exactly what they want, is to just feel better. They want to feel, just to be able to sit in a chair and just look around the world and have gratitude, like to feel peace and happiness. And when you're going through this turmoil, it doesn't exist very much. And to overlay people's like judgment on that, or have this idea of how they're going to help you get out of that doesn't help. That doesn't help. It's so encompassing. It's so much bigger than a question. It's so much bigger than disappointment. It's like, add that, all of that times 10. That's a faith crisis. Because it's like you're supposed to go to this heavenly place to get those answers, and that's where you're really having the problems. So it's like you're getting hit. Your answers are where you get hit. Like, that's a painful place to be. You can't blame. supposed to blame Heavenly Father. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's got to be us because it can't be him. So we put the blame internally and we create this internal chaos. I don't even think we create it. It is. We've got to show up as, and that's where we're showing up as brothers and sisters to support each other. So your anguish is not as much about you as it is the opportunity for me to feel into my own issues, see what's mine and what's uncomfortable, fix that, and then show you love, then show up with you and support because I'm okay here. What you're doing isn't stressing me out. What you're doing isn't making me feel uncomfortable because it's your path. And so many times we got to be careful that we're not trying to fix someone else in order to stop the anguish or the discomfort within ourselves. That doesn't work. And that's what that first session with Robin was about, was like, oh, some of this is my own stuff. Some of this is me. So that was like coming up for air. And that was another thing too, is then after the session, she's like, is there anything else? Her sweet voice. And so then I told her what had gone on. And I'd never been in the presence of someone that just heard the information. They didn't duck their eyes or they didn't try and talk me out of it. Like they just held the space. That's the best word I can put of it. She said, she kind of shared some experiences that she had, some parallels that she had and didn't try and give me an answer. She just sat in that anguish with me, the tears. She just sat there. And that was the most healing I'd ever had in my whole life. And that's when I really that's when I was like, I want to do that. Because that was sacred. That was so sacred because she just mourned with me. And that was her. She filled her covenant better than anybody I'd ever met in my whole life. She just was with me in mine. She wasn't sitting there trying to feel what this meant to her, and I know that's really hard you got to slow way down in order to do that. But I guarantee all of us do that. I still do it. You have within yourself a reaction to what's being said or what's not being said or whatever. But that reaction is yours. That reaction is yours. So probably I think he removed his name like in March. And by June, I think in May, I had my first session. And then in June, this is where the story can turn into a little bit of a happily ever after. It's not, but
that ensign ending.
The ensign ending.
Woo!
I mean, at the beginning, part of me was like, maybe that's going to come, But all of a sudden, I remember it was a Friday night. We've always done our Friday date nights. We've always stayed connected. And it was a Friday night. He was home from work and he laid down on the bed and he was just like, I am just so tired. I need to take a nap. I said, okay, just go for it. And I just sat there and was like, I had our computer desk kind of by my computer kind of by the bed. And I just played around, dinked around and cut 2 or 3 hours had gone by and he was asleep. And I was like, so we woke up and I said, why don't you just go to bed? Like, obviously something's going on. So he went back to bed and then he slept until like 2 in the afternoon. And then he got up and then the next day and slept again. And for the next year and a half, he would come home from work. We'd have dinner and then he would literally almost go to sleep and then wake up the next day. And then the weekends, it was like he would wake up at like 2 in the afternoon, easy. And after about a year and a half, he's like, what is happening? And even after a few weeks after, he's like, as soon as you break that cord, it's kind of like, maybe that didn't shift everything like I kind of wanted it to, it's like, you turn the next age. It's not like, oh, well, now I feel like a different person. You just don't. I'm still the same. Everything's kind of the same. It didn't shift everything like I think he thought it would shift. But part of it was, and this is another part that's hard. That's because, and I am kind of hesitant sometimes to tell people our story because I just don't want them to make it have to be the way their story showed up, But part of our story is, a part of that was he didn't feel like, again, I was believing him, or I wasn't showing up for him in the way that he wanted me to. So it was so confused into wanting this acceptance in this world. Like, that's his core wound, is to be accepted and for who he is, and little by little needing to feel like no matter what happened, I still loved him. Like that was a piece of it. So when that didn't completely shift so easily, and he didn't feel completely, it was like, wait, like she's not gone. I mean, it was almost good in a way, because it was like, hey, we've gotten to the end of the rope. She's not gone, but I still don't feel like I'm loved. And so I think that just short circuited him. And so he slept for a year and a half. So it came to this point of anguish with my husband, and you don't know what to do. So I said to him, it was just a simple thing. He says, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I said, And he was like, "That's what you want?" Like, we didn't ever say the word. He's like, "That's what you want?" And I was like, "Anyway." And I just changed the subject and went on. And Christmas Eve came, and about, halfway through the day, I don't even know what day of the week it was on, but he was like, "I need to go shopping." And I was like, all the stores are closed. Like, it was like evening, and I think he was like, I think he had this plan, but like, then it got real, right? It got real.
I need to go shopping.
Yeah.
I think I'm understanding where we're going with this.
Yeah, he was like,
shopping.
Yeah, he was like, I think I need, actually, I didn't buy you anything for Christmas. And I was like, it's okay. I mean, and I think he had this idea, but I think, and so in my stocking was this thing. This is, I will get myself rebaptized. That was my present for that year. And I think it was, I don't think it was necessarily all just, I think that was the only way he could move forward, was it if it was for me, or if, do you know what I mean? That was the only way he could make that step. And so he went through and he got rebaptized, he didn't sleep after that. So if we want to get into, if we want to make it this miraculous thing, we can. However, it's not that simple. I mean, like right now, he hasn't ever gotten his temple renewed. So right now I don't have a temple marriage. But that's another thing, is like, so now, do I want that in a different way than I had it before? Yeah. So that agency, and what's different is, it's not about, I want that marriage because I want to be with him forever, or else, because I don't know if it's hard for me to believe that after we die, some like little lens goes over your eyes, and I won't recognize him, or I'm going to be put in this world and he's going to be put over here. I don't know how it works. I just know that I think that we don't know. I don't feel like this Heavenly Father is going to say, well, since you had that really uncomfortable time, you can't see each other now. That's sorry. Like I say, if there's people that want to be upset by that, I can understand it. Like, I don't have an explanation for it. All I know is I've been maybe gifted the ability to not have that worry me, not have that be afraid. But that's not why I want to do it. What I would like to happen is for us to say, you know what, we don't know, but man, if there's a chance to be with you for eternity, I'll sign that any minute. You know what I mean? Like, it's more about here to be like, I don't know about that, but I'll bet just the idea of it's worth it to me. That's where I'm at now. That's why I would want it. Not because I'm afraid I won't be with my children anymore. If that shows up at some point, I guess that will show up, but I just have not had that. I haven't had that. So that is, that was in 2017. And it was, there was beautiful things. My son was home from his mission, was able to baptize his own dad. That was kind of special. And then about a year ago, there was just this, he kind of started having this things just kind of came to a head really. And really at this point, we couldn't talk about the church. The church wasn't, it's like, the church, we've been there, done that. There's more to the story. Right. And so we started therapy, and even the therapist, she said, some of this frustration with the church needs to move in some other directions. And so we're starting to understand some things, and things are going really well with understanding where we've come from, how we tick, where I show up and where he shows up. Like, it's been a beautiful year, but that hasn't been like, and now we're happily ever after at church every Sunday. That hasn't been the case. And I have to, if I start to worry or get upset about that, then I'm down the rabbit hole. So I just have to be here, and I just have to do it one at a time. I have to do what I do. We talked about before. I have to say, do I go to church today? And my answer was yes. And then ask again next week.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Ask me again next week. Yeah. Oh.
Ask me again next week. And that was my message. And so, and it wasn't just about asking every week. It was just like, be with me. Like, that's the message. Be with me. And, you never know. You never know I don't know what comes next, but it's like, but here, right now, here, we're here. And you're safe, and I love you. And that's it. But as soon as I start to worry, I could go, you go crazy. So it's just one moment at a time. One, being with my, and there's some times where I have that pain and anguish. And what's beautiful now that wasn't there before is now maybe I could go to him and I can tell him I'm hurting. And he can hold within himself, because he knows his emotions and sensations going on within him are his. And so I'm not putting that on him. It's not possible.
Oh, well, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you.
And for being a safe place, and just, as you talked about, just being with people in their anguish. And so thank you for being here with me. And I really do feel that. And so thank you for coming on, Mechelle. What an awesome episode. What an amazing, I love doing these, and I've loved having you on today. And I want to make sure MechelleWingle.com and thewholenessnetwork.com. Do you mind giving a quick recap of both of those? I don't want to mess it up.
You're good. So my own website is just, I have a library, little videos that I record where I just, who knows, whatever needs to be said, I say. And sometimes there's downloads there, but those are just usually I do a Facebook Live on a Wednesday morning, and I just record those and put those on my website, and just try and help people see things from different perspectives, and help people understand other people's perspectives and what that feels like. And I am big with the 4 bodies, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical bodies, and how they interact with each other. And I teach a lot about that. And so my website is just where you can book an appointment, and those kind of things are there. And then the Wholeness Network is me and Robin Johnson, my business partner, created this online place to feel better. Like, when we are feeling that anguish, or when there's times when we have this need to, we're frenzied, or sometimes we're depressed, or sometimes we're anxious. And so we have this library, this online library of all these different techniques and videos and things like that to help you feel better, help you get back to a place where you can take a deep breath and then begin to move forward. And we're not a replacement for things, but there is a support. And sometimes just having something to do when you're in that place helps you be able to move forward. So there's these things called visual meditations that I just love. All you do is turn on the video and just watch it, and it just has either affirmations or music or all these things that can help you feel better. We have tapping, and we have EFT, which is a kind of similar to EMDR. You just watch the video and it shows you what to do. So that's great. And then sometimes we have live events and things, and we have a podcast, the wholenessnetwork.com or Wholeness Network podcast. But yeah, that's my joy, is I'm trying to bring healing to the world, because that's what we need healing. That's my favorite word ever. Because when you don't feel good, you need healing, and that's all encompassing. And to be whole is not to be perfect. And it's okay for me. I can help you, and I can stand by you and help and be your healer, and still have things I need healed at the same time, because we're always in a progression. That's the nature of the gospel, right? Eternal progression.
Ho, ho, ho.
So we got to let go of this idea that we will reach a destination.
That's not the point. Okay. Well, because I've always thought I need to get to a point.
Right.
I'm in this mode and I need to progress to something else.
Right.
Wow. Oh, I love that.
That's the overlay we have on it. Like, this is not where we make it so simple. Like, this is bad and this is good.
Do good things to get back into the good.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, like, I wish for that day where it's like, hey, if I do all these good things, then I feel happy and lovely. But that works until it does not work. And if it shows up as a death, if it shows up as a faith crisis, if it shows up as losing all that you have, if it shows up in losing whatever is meaningful to you, I can guarantee you the feelings and sensations inside are similar. The stories are different, but they're similar. It feels the same in the body. So we can connect on that. I might not have exactly what you have, but I know what anguish feels like. I know it feels like you've been on a long ride and you get home and there's that like deafening buzz that's quiet in your ear. Like that, an emotional version of that. I know what that feels like. That's not fun, but that's what parts of a faith crisis feel like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I relate so much to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for coming on. I've loved this episode. And I hope our listeners and viewers have loved it, because what an incredible and unique story that you've brought. And hopefully we didn't get to the stages of faith. We wanted to talk about the stages of faith, but we're already pretty far in. And so we'll just have to make another episode. So if I'd love to have you come back anytime, and we could talk about that, or we could talk about something else, or whatever. But so thank you again for watching or listening, and be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, and we have a Facebook and Instagram and Twitter account too, I think. And we'll see you again next time.